G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back to another video. And here we go, with a brand new track. So we're back with the Nations Cup. This is Nations Cup, of course, in Group 3. But we're at a brand new circuit. The most recently added circuit to Gran Turismo 7. And a circuit that we haven't seen before. A brand new one. Very, very unexpected as well. Nobody saw this coming. It is, of course, Watkins Glen. We have the long course and the short course. We're going to be racing at the long course today, so we use the boot section. But what we're going to do in this qualifying session here today is basically just see what the track looks like for a start, because many people watching this maybe have never seen the track before. We certainly have never seen it in Gran Turismo 7, so today is a day of firsts. And speaking of firsts, we have the first turn, which is a 90-degree right-hander that sort of compresses at the apex and spits you out at the exit here. Then we have this uphill S's section, so really important to actually get that turn 1 exit as best as you possibly can, because you can see it leads out to a very long flat-out section, flat out through the S's, turns 2, 3 and 4, out onto the top straight, and up towards a bus stop chicane. Pretty much a mirror of the chicane we see at Daytona, the road course that is. So instead of jutting into the left, we jut into the right. But then we're followed by this long right-hander. There's a lot of time to be found there if you manage to get the car gripped up absolutely perfectly. And then we have this sort of downhill left-hander, sort of long turns here. They're all characterized. This track's characterized by long turns. You have another fairly long turn here that's fairly obviously and quite significantly uphill as we head through there. So it's very difficult to get the car to the apex, and very difficult to get on the power. Then we have this tricky section coming up, starting with this over 90-degree right-hander, so quite a bit slower than you may think, followed by another over 90-degree left-hander. This one's over a crest right on the exit, so the car can oversteer even if you think you've got it gripped up, which can be quite difficult. Of course, then we have this not quite 90-degree left-hander, so you fly the car through there, and pretty much this exactly 90-degree right-hander to finish up the lap. And that's a tour of Watkins Glen. Let's take it pretty much as fast as I could in this qualifying session, so turn up the volume and take a listen. It's quite a decent lap there, actually, a 141.8, and that is actually quite fast, to be honest, you know, given it's a new track and a new combination. But let's see where it puts us on the final grid after the Nations Cup introduction. lovely as always, and we meet ourselves on the grid, and we can see that qualifying time, that quite satisfactory qualifying time at that, was good enough for P8 on this grid. This is the Nations Cup, where towards the end of GT Sport I was sort of getting podiums, but I think a lot of players have sort of returned for GT7, so I'm not quite on the podium level that I used to be, but I think I can be getting myself a decent top 10 result. Pretty much the top 6 are all star players. Like, the top 6, I've done a good job to beat any one of them. So in this particular race where we see Oscar Redfern in 7th, it's not a name I've seen too much. I think perhaps 7th is probably the best we can go in this race, so we'll just do our best to see how that goes. You can see Mint Matt straight off the start, Matt Simmons that is, as we... Oh, look at that on the curb. Let's not try and repeat that, of course. That was a definite bit of a moment there. But what I was going to say is Matt is sort of struggling a little bit at this stage, and that was because he was on the hard tyre. So he's gone into the pits off the first lap there. He's only done 1 lap on the hards, so that is right. We have a bit of strategy in the fray today. But unfortunately for me, this happens on lap 2. I obviously did not learn from my little scary moment on lap 1, because I've gone and done it to the full extent on lap 2, and I get overhauled by Tez and Warrior. So 2 cars that I was kind of comfortably ahead of, I am now behind. So what's going to happen here is I'm probably going to end up getting stuck in a battle with these couple of cars here, instead of just focusing on keeping my pace down to a minimum. Of course, you want minimum pace because you want the lowest lap times. I think that makes sense. Or are you generally talking about you want max pace? I don't know, but you know what I'm trying to say. You can see I'm immediately catching back up to Warrior, who I think is probably on the hard tyre, just as Mint Matt was, and we'll see if that sort of resolves itself as we head up to the pit entry. I have decided to start on the mediums, and there are people that are going to be on the softs. So it's actually quite a big strategy one today. Oh, the yellow flag's out as we round through this left-hander, and Oscar Redfern's had an off-track excursion driving that BMW M6. The 2 cars ahead of me are also driving BMW M6s. Let's have a look as we round through this final turn. Tez takes the pit entry, so he's on the hard tyre. So Warrior, I'm not quite sure what he's doing then, is if he's on the hard tyre, he's running it for an extra lap here, which is pretty much not what you want. I would assume he's on the hards, because I made that move fairly easily, and I'm on the medium tyre. So the only tyre that's harder than the mediums is the hard. But I was going to say it's a fairly big strategy race today, because all 3 tyres are available and all 3 are required, which means effectively we have a mandated 2-stop here, but you have to make sure you choose different tyres for all 3 of your stints. You can see we've got Warrior right up our backside here. In fact, he actually backs off as we head into the bus stop chicane. I think it's actually technically called the inner loop, and I would love to tell you what turns that bus stop chicane is, but pretty much on all the official track maps, the bus stop does not count for any corners. So I guess I can show you a picture of what I think the corner numbering should be. I also kind of went on about this in my previous video with the Daytona road course, kind of saying how weird the numbering was on that track, and we seem to have a bit of a repeat on Watkins Glen here. So I think officially this layout has 11 turns, but it technically has 15 changes of direction. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But anyway, let's get back to the on-track action here. I was quite easily able to hold off Oscar through that sort of opening start of the race there. Actually, it was Warrior. I don't know actually, I'm not quite sure what's going on there, to be honest. Maybe Warrior went into the pit lane and released Oscar from behind him, who's now 1.3 seconds behind me. But nonetheless, some people from ahead of us have made their first pit stop, mostly off the soft tyres, but some off the medium as well. We've come out just behind Cydorg. We're on, at the end of this lap, it's going to be 7-lap old medium tyres here, so we've really not got a great amount of grip at this particular stage. As we head through that long right-hander of the outer loop, Cydorg has just gapped us. By the end of the lap, he's gapped us even further, so he was about 2.7 seconds there. There we go, 2.8 seconds as everybody else ahead. Twitchy, McEwen, Ranger Oz, they all pit in and change tyres. That's going to be their first pit stop done and dusted. We come out just behind Twitchy, 1.7-ish, 1.6 seconds, and McEwen just behind. So I think what's actually happened here, I felt comfortable enough to continue with another lap on these medium tyres here because I was, you know, holding off Oscar quite adequately enough for me to be satisfied. But what's happened here is I've got myself sort of in the middle of the fight for the lead of the race, which I don't really want to be in because all these drivers are going to be significantly faster than me and on newer tyres than me. And given sort of they're at the top of the field, they would generally run their tyres in order of softness. So the soft tyres, then medium tyres, then hard tyres. And given it's the first pit stop, I would say it's likely a lot of the drivers are now on the medium tyres, whereas I'm on 7.5 lap old mediums. McEwen is on brand new mediums, so he's got quite a big grip advantage compared to me, and I did not want to hold him up and ruin his race, so I just let him go, and I pit in at the end of the lap in which all that went down. My race is not going quite as well as maybe Twitchy or McEwen or Psydorg's, so I decided to get this hard tyre out of the way, and I sort of base my decision on what the traffic situation looks up on the track map in the top right. If I can see there's sort of a massive group of people 20 seconds behind and I have to pit, I'll probably put the harder tyres on so I'm only stuck in that group for a couple of laps, as opposed to putting the soft tyres on or the softer tyres on in my decision there and end up getting stuck in that battle. So we've come out ahead of Oscar again. We're on the hard tyres now, so we're not going to have much grip whatsoever. We have to be really careful of that last apex there of that bus stop chicane because it did not like me last time I went over the top of it, and it presented me quite swiftly with a barrier on the front of my car. So I have to be really careful with that and just take it easy over that last apex, but Oscar is also going to have to do the same thing. He's going to have a bit of slipstream, yes, but he's also going to have a bit of dirty air, which should affect his car negatively in terms of the amount of understeer and oversteer he gets as we round all the corners. So especially out of that uphill hairpin, he's going to particularly struggle to get the power down if he gets too close to the rear of me. If I also get a poor exit, which granted is quite easy to do in this car, it's got a lot of torque, this Genesis, so you can see the car just stepped out sideways here, and it also makes this left-hander quite difficult as well. But if I get a poor exit out of one of these corners, Oscar is right there. He's there to pick up the pieces if they're presented to him. He's only 6/10 behind, so if he's about that close as we head out into that front straight, or sort of out of turn one, he will be right within contention to actually try and get something done heading up towards that bus stop chicane. A load of people come in for their pit stops. I've kind of lost track of where everyone is at in terms of first to second pit stops, but it's probably some of these cars' second pit stop now, and they're going to do the final 7 laps or 8 laps or so on maybe a medium set of tyres or a soft set of tyres. But that's not all said and done. There could be some people still yet to run their hards, and speaking of hard tyres as well, that's going to be the end of my stint here. So fairly quiet middle stint, which is all you really need on the hard tyres. You don't want to get engaged in a battle or sort of get stuck with someone or sort of have someone heckling the back of you throughout all your hard tyre stint because you simply have not got the grip to try and fend them off. But I think Oscar, he's actually following my strategy pretty much the exact same. So he's gone for the medium tyres at the start, the hard tyres in the middle, and the soft tyres at the end, which is exactly what I have done. As we round through this final turn, there wasn't really too much going on in the exit of the pits. This is the end. This is the end of the first flying lap on this stint here, and you can see we've done a 42.7, which is of course our fastest lap of the race, which is to be expected. We're on the softest tyres now with half a tank left of fuel. Fuel's not really an issue in this race. It's just as it burns off, your car lightens up and makes it a little bit more nimble and better in changes of direction. But what we're really looking for now is the gap ahead to Tez, which sits at about 1 second, not quite within that slipstream range just yet. The gap behind Oscar Redfern is sort of about the same, 1 second as well. But what we're going to be looking out for is how these gaps are changing and how they're fluctuating, because Tez was over 2 seconds up the road as we exited the pits on our soft tyres, so I'm not sure whether Tez is also on a soft tyre or if he's on a medium tyre at the moment. I don't think he's on a hard tyre. We're not quite gaining enough for him to be on the hards, but he may be on the medium set of tyres at the moment, because that gap, however, that gap isn't really coming down. too much at the moment. It's still 1 second. The gap to Oscar's opened up to 1.2. I think Tez has gone slightly wide through that uphill hairpin there. He's lost a tenth through there, so that's down to, it was 8.5 tenths now. It's going to be about 8 tenths by the time we touch the brakes for the next braking zone here. Tez just misses the apex ever so slightly again. I think maybe we miss it slightly as well, but the gap is down to 7 tenths at the moment. If we continue to gain at this rate, we will be within prime position to try and take this position off Tez as we head up the top straight towards the bus stop chicane. Tez turns in a bit late there. He's probably going to lose a little bit more time there as well, sitting at about 5-6 tenths at the moment. And as we exit out onto this front straight now, is there going to be anybody else in the pit lane? There is not. Rather disappointingly, we are sort of sitting at 11th, which is second to last at the moment. Oh, the yellow flag is out, so someone's had a little bit of an issue on the exit of turn 1 here. Quite easy to do because there's a compression at the apex and then it drops away on the left-hand side of the exit curb as well, so the car can sort of fall down the outside of the curb and spin the back of the car around and send you to the inside, and that's exactly what's happened to GTP Greatness now, who goes defensive into the chicane, although I think he's got the right indicator on just to tell Tez to let him go. I give him a couple of flashes of the headlights because what's happened here is Greatness has given me a bit of a distraction in my fight with Tez, and it was looking increasingly likely as we lapped on and on that I was perhaps able to get past Tez, but that's not quite going to happen now because I've now got a car inserted between us that's not quite on the pace. You can see the back of that BMW M6 just sliding all over the shop as Greatness tries to navigate all of these corners. And it's really not doing my race any good because you can see I've caught right up to the back of him now. Greatness still has oversteer on the exit of this right-hander, and now I've got to try and complete this move. All the while, Tez drives away and opens that gap up once again. We're only going to have 2 laps to go after this, and I'm not quite sure whether that will probably be enough to try and catch back up to Tez, and whether it will indeed be enough to even overtake him. What happens here is that because I've already kind of spent the stint catching up to Tez, I've taken a bit of a chunk out of the life of my tyres at the moment, so I'm not quite sure if I've got enough grip, left to actually make that impression on Tez again. So I've essentially got to do a second lot of really hard lapping on this tyre, and I'm not quite sure whether it's up to the task. The other thing that's happened there is because I've been stuck battling with Greatness after his off 1 lap ago, Redfern or Oscar has closed that gap back down behind me once again, so much so that I deem it necessary to actually go defensive as we sort of head up through the S's, just taking the minimum distance possible, taking the inside of all the turns, and make sure we keep it on the right-hand side here. And I think Oscar is just going to be looking up the left-hand side there, which isn't the best side to try and get a move done at the chicane. You really want to be up the inside where I am, and that is exactly why, because we are able to defend that position successfully. Although we're slow off the exit, is Oscar going to be able to get up the inside? He's not quite going to be able to get that done as we close the door there. He runs a little bit wide out of the exit of the outer loop there, and as we plunge down the hill, just got to make sure we keep this Genesis under control. That gap to Tez 2.3, so rather disappointingly we have not quite been able to get past Tez as it was looking so likely we were going to be able to do. The other thing sort of in that as well is that right ahead of Tez are 2 more cars which we would probably be right near if we simply just overtook him like we were pretty much looking good to do. We go slightly defensive into this right-hander now as Oscar was pretty close there. This Watkins Glen long course littered with plenty of overtaking opportunities. This left-hand is another one if you can get a good exit out of the previous one. Pretty much most corners on this track are good overtaking opportunities, so you really have to have your wits about you and you really have to be on the pace, because if you are off the pace or you've got yourself a slower tyre bolted on, you will find yourself dropping positions like nobody's business. But as we round through this final turn, you might just spot in the distance ahead of Tez, the 2 cars are fighting as well. So I think maybe we'd have had a pretty good chance at trying to engage ourselves in that duo that would then become a trio if we were able to just sort of get past Tez and continue to drive up the road. But Greatness has put a halt to that, and now throughout this final lap, my main job is to keep Oscar behind me. This particular race was a battle between the Genesis and the BMW M6. All of the Group 3 cars were available, but these 2 cars were sort of they were on the top 10. They were the 2 cars on the top 10, and they were pretty much like for like, pretty well balanced in race conditions here, so we haven't really got too much to worry about in that sense. We've got similar straight lines, similar cornering, similar traction. We've just got to, essentially, it comes down to the driver, and I've just got to make sure that I keep my head cool, I stay calm and stay collected, and not stress too much about what could have been, because Tez is even getting himself into that battle of the two that were ahead of him, and I would say that it is comfortably now a trio, which could have been a quartet. But again, I'm still reminiscing on what could have been. As we head through this last sort of main sequence of corners, the last 4 corners, this cutout along the sort of towards the end of the circuit, Oscar's still 4/10 behind. He's not going to be close enough to get this move here, which is kind of probably his last best overtaking opportunity. Oh, we get a massive kick of oversteer over the crest, remember? Massive crest on the exit of that corner, and that caught me out here. But this corner's not the best overtaking, and neither is the final turn, because you kind of sail into the entry, take the apex, and plunge out on the exit. There's not really a large braking zone to get it done, but nonetheless, Oscar still 4/10 behind, not quite good enough to get that position there at the end of that particular race. But I think the important thing to remember there is that Oscar actually had a bit of an incident at the start of the race, and that's why he ended up behind me. I think in any other race, if the race was run on a different day, he probably would have stayed ahead of me, having qualified ahead of me. But that race is actually a rather disappointing 9th position there. It says a clean race there, and it was a clean race, and I'm very happy that it was a clean race. But I think besides the clean laps being pretty good and the battling being pretty good on that race, I'm rather disappointed to kind of have that spin at the start of the race, which cost me a good chunk of time, like 8 seconds or something. And unfortunately as well, getting stuck in Greatness's incident as well, which put me off the back of Tez, which consequently put me off the back of 7th or even 6th. But for this one here, 234 points. It's not a bad point score, but I definitely left some points on the table, and that is exactly why the next video you will see from me is going to be the next slot of this round in the Nations Cup. Let's see if we can improve on that 234, because I definitely felt there was performance left on the table there. But overall, quite a fun race actually. Besides the crash and the little bit of getting caught up in other people's incidents, it was a really good battle with Oscar there. He kept me honest the whole way, and that little pursuit of Tez as well was really, really fun. So I think Watkins Glen actually, it seems to be a pretty good track for racing, I'll be completely honest. And I know everyone kind of says, oh, every track's good for racing. I'm like, no. Watkins Glen seems to be a bit of a standout, because that particular race was really, really fun, and the corners all offer a unique challenge, and each corner offers a very obvious and easy way to make mistakes. So it really rewards those that put in the practice and puts in the time to try and sort of get up to speed here. But anyway, that's going to round out this video today, so do hit the like button if you enjoyed, and do subscribe if you'd like to see more videos and streams from me. Do leave a comment as well, as questions, comments, constructive criticism, as always, very much appreciated. But that's going to be the end of this one today, and that means that is it from me. So once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.